Hi, my name's Kim. I'm a licensed and nationally certified East Asian medical provider and a Taoist practitioner. This week, I wanted to talk about an article that I read because it scared me and it changed my behavior. So I want to look at that article and I want to tear it apart a little bit so that you can understand probably the whole gist of the story and that you can make better decisions for yourself. And I think that was one of the things that upset me about this article is that it created a lot of fear without helping me make better decisions for myself. In fact, I made a worse decision for myself until I finally pulled the whole article apart and understood what was going on. And I would like our journalists today to not focus so much on fear baiting people so that we click their article, but also to give us information that we can find useful so that we can take better care of ourselves. Okay, so here's the article. Let me read you the headline on this. A man was killed by taking vitamin D supplements that he had been taking for months. Okay, that's pretty scary, right? When you think that so many of us are taking vitamin D right now because of all the research, which has shown that by making sure that you have the appropriate amount of vitamin D in your body, that actually is protective against COVID and could actually save your life. And now I'm reading this article that said, whoa, here was somebody who was killed because they took vitamin D supplements. Okay, so I had to get into this article a little bit more and understand what was going on. So let's look at what happened here. Here's an 89-year-old individual who is admitted to ER on May 10th of 2023, and he is diagnosed with hypercalcemia. So hypercalcemia means you have too much calcium in the blood. Here's the interesting thing about hypercalcemia. Do you know that is common? And do you know one of the reasons why it's so common is because of antacids. The calcium in antacids is not bioavailable, and if you take too much, it has a tendency to increase your blood levels of calcium. If you're curious about how calciums impact your system, I have an episode out here called The 7 Most Common Calciums and how you can pick the right one for yourself. Hypercalcemia is very common, and they're treating him for hypercalcemia, and yet within 10 days, he passes. Now, they also do blood work, and they find out that his blood level of vitamin D is really high. I went to the coroner's report because I was curious what that meant. This is really different because I can tell you in the United States, you wouldn't be able to find this kind of information, but here it is. Here's the coroner's report to Nature Plus UK, which was a supplement manufacturer. And what they state is that here is the circumstances of the person's death, and here's what me as the coroner, what I think caused the death. And he was admitted on May 10th, and then he died on May 20th. And hypercalcemia can cause congestive heart failure. It can cause heart palpitations. It can slow down the cardiac muscle. So in his postmortem, he identified the cause of death as 2 major causes of death with some subcategories under one of them. So the first major cause of death is congestive cardiac failure and chronic kidney failure. So it was on top of chronic kidney failure. And the subcategories under that was the hypercalcemia and the vitamin D toxicity. And then the second cause of death is ischemic heart disease. So 2 things. We know that this individual has chronic kidney disease. We also know that this individual has had a previous heart attack because he has ischemic heart disease. So he is probably on a number of medications also. And yet we still don't know how much vitamin D he was taking or how much calcium he was taking. What we do know is that the vitamin D levels were at 380, Well, anything over 200 is considered toxic. So I'm not sure how much vitamin D this person was taking. I think it'd be really important to understand how much vitamin D they were taking. The research on vitamin D toxicity hadn't identified deaths from vitamin D overdoses, which is what vitamin D toxicity is. But when you do run into a vitamin D overdose, the ones that have been documented, they are taking enormous amounts of vitamin D. So they are taking 130,000 IU to 150,000 IU for long periods of time. And here we can see this woman has been taking it for 20 months. So, but they also note that when you remove the vitamin D, that given time, all their systems went back to normal. But this woman was probably not 89. So let's go back to this person here. And this can kind of talk to where you could get value from working with some holistic practitioners who are trained in supplements and how they impact the body. And so one of the things that happens as we age is that our ability to uptake supplements gets reduced, and they end up staying in our blood longer than they need to. At 89, his ability to uptake supplements would probably be greatly reduced. Now, usually at 50 or older, you start seeing that your metabolism is declining, right? I mean, anybody who's hit 50 all of a sudden realize they cannot eat what they used to eat. They cannot drink what they used to drink. They have to change their diet if they do not want to turn into a small porpoise. That just happens. Your metabolism slows down and it's not as efficient. So you can't take supplements at the same level as you were taking them in your 20s and 30s. You have to start decreasing it. Vitamin D can cause kidney disease if taken in large enough quantities. And we can see this woman, she took 130,000 IU, and she did have kidney issues. That's the renal issues. But in 6 months, that went back to normal. Okay, so what's a normal dose of vitamin D? Well, in the United States, I had always trained at 400 IU. I guess it's 600 IU now. What's the maximum dose for a normal healthy person? They think that's maybe 4,000 to 5,000 IU. So at 4,000 to 5,000 IU, that would be your max dose. Somehow this person was taking 130,000 IU, which is like a small handful of pills. I'm not quite sure how they're doing that. If we look at his blood levels, they were at 380. Anything over 200 is considered toxic vitamin D levels. We really need more information here, yet it appears that maybe his pre-existing conditions played a part here. His kidney failure, his heart disease, and his age could have negatively impacted his body's ability to metabolize nutrients. I wanted to see what the supplement company said. And so I went out and I pulled up their supplements. And here's their vitamin D supplement. Here's the one thing that I noticed on their supplements is they say take only one capsule a day. And if you're going to take one capsule a day, they recommend that you test your vitamin D levels in your blood every 3 months. If you're taking these fat soluble vitamins that don't easily wash out of your system, that you test your vitamin D levels. And especially if you're doing this on your own, and if you're not working with a professional who might have said, hey, 5,000 a day, that might be too high, especially because of your kidney damage that you already have. And, and you've had a heart disease too, and you're on medications. So your metabolism might not be working as well as you'd like it to. And we need to test your blood every 3 months to see what happens. That's the kind of help you can get from somebody who's a professional. But they also had that information on the supplement bag that test your blood every 3 months to make sure that you're not taking too much or too little. that's nice, right? You're like, oh, great. Thanks for the insight. But if you're anything like me, you always have an opinion about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And sometimes we think, well, I don't need to do this. Well, I can tell you, I've started supplementing vitamin D and I've been doing it for almost a year now. And I do take my vitamin D levels every 3 months, sometimes more, depending on, where I am with my supplementation. And just to make sure that I'm not taking too much. If this was maybe 10, 15 years ago, I probably would have blown it off and not worried about it. And the other thing is working with my Western medical doctor, I think they took my vitamin D levels maybe 4 years ago and they were low. And then I started doing vitamin D supplementation. And then the levels came back to normal and they never took the vitamin D level again. So when all this stuff came up about COVID, I, of course, went out to test my vitamin D levels and they were on the floor. They were so low. And so I started supplementing, but I knew I had to supplement at higher doses. And being that I had to supplement at higher doses, I really needed to monitor my blood to make sure that I wasn't taking too much vitamin D. I think the lesson here, because you know what, when I first read this, I had just done my test maybe 4 days ago for my vitamin D. And I wasn't quite sure, where this new level of vitamin D was going to place me. And when I read this article, I actually stopped taking my vitamin D supplements until I could find out where my level was. And I got the results today and I'm still within the range, but I'm dropping. So I can take more vitamin D right now. There's two key learnings. One is aging matters in really subtle ways that we don't like to acknowledge. And you are busy. You have a life. You have a job. You have a family. Do you really have the time that it needs to learn a whole new medicine in holistic medicine so that you don't have to learn through trial and error? Because of all this, it just makes sense to reach out to a holistic healthcare professional. And I'll put a link to my website in the video description below. You can also reach out and join Health Hub, where I focus on the changes that have happened to our immune system since the pandemic and some of the things that we're doing in clinic that may help you improve your health. The second learning is not everybody's going to be able to talk to a professional. And if that's you, well, then start with following the directions on the package. Until next time, I will catch you on the other side.